And hello, hello, mabuhay, hey, hey. Ako si Ate Janine coming to you from Spain. And Tito Brett, excited sana ako na pag-usapan natin yung yung language, learning a new foreign language, mga funny stories. But today, because of the news and because of where we are, I think kailangan talaga natin pag-usapan itong topic natin today. No? Yes, definitely. Definitely, Tito Bet. Well, for me, it's like I just moved to Europe. You know, like for me, like the things that are happening here are still quite far. I don't know, parang all my past life was in the Philippines. So it's like I wanted to talk to you about it and any friends that you might know that know more about the topic because I want to understand it more. Like I'm not going to lie and pretend that I know anything. Like I did some research, I watched some videos to try and understand the topic, but parang I realized that it's something na maapektuhan lahat. Parang it's a world issue that's really important and I want to understand it more. So I'm excited to get into it today para himayin natin and mas magets ko and sana yung mga nanonood dun sa video na to mas magets nila after our episode, 'di ba? Marami rin siyang trivia tulad mo, Tito Brett. Okay. Ready with my notebook? Okay. Nice. Right. Hello, sir. Are you here?
Yeah, yeah. Where do I start? I mean, start.
Yes, exactly. Like that's the question, right? Like for me, it's like I was like, good afternoon. Okay, sorry, na-excite ako. Oh, go. I mean, okay, ayan. Na-excite ako, so go. But yeah, welcome to Kwentuhang Pinoy where we make kwento about our life in our Pinoy life in Europe. And today we really wanted to unpack the issue of Ukraine for people like me that come from zero. You know, like from zero to understanding and I don't know, like hopefully having compassion, empathy, and being able to do at least a little bit of something to help, right? To help make the world a little bit better, Max. But yeah, so I know that there's a lot of facts, figures, and all of that. But let's say for someone like me that's starting from zero, how do you start explaining this complex issue?
Well, I'll start first of all with my background. I'm half Filipino, actually. In origin, my father is Filipino, my mother is German, actually
Okay.
from West Berlin. So actually, we have some. I was actually even born in West Berlin, but we moved back to the
Oh,
Philippines when I was a child. So, I mean, we have some awareness also in the German side of the family of the East-West. So, I mean, basically, a large part of my family, West German family grew up surrounded by the wall and these kinds of things. And, you know, the same, well, the Soviets at that time guard around the wall. So basically the same, I have a feel for that kind of idea. And also out of curiosity, I've traveled to both Kiev and St. Petersburg, Kiev being the main city under attack now, and Petersburg, St. Petersburg is the city where Vladimir Putin was born and raised, and where his father died in 1944, defending Soviet Union against the Germans. So basically, we have to see the different aspects. First of all, it's personal history, because this is how Kissinger said. Well, I could say, well, yes, like Brett said, I could, in some ways, I'm quite, what do you call that? I'm quite interested in a lot of topics, and that's why I don't know if I've said my name yet, Ireneo Salazar. I think I already have.
We introduced you. Yes.
So anyway, yeah, the thing is, Kissinger said, to understand Putin, one has to read Dostoevsky, which is about a lot of stories from a difficult part of Petersburg where Putin was born, and to understand his psychology, which is a bit somewhat difficult, somewhat paranoid as well. One has to look at that. Also very calculating. You had a question?
Yes, well, I wanted acknowledge ang galing ng perspective mo, because I mean you're half German, so it's like you're exposed to that, but you're also exposed to the Philippines and how it is like there and how our culture is. So like we're excited to talk to you about this topic. But okay, like Ukraine is under attack. How did that even come to be? Like what are the, I don't know, what's the main conflict between Ukraine and Russia? How did that happen when, I don't know, in my mind they were allies?
Well, it's a long story because it's one could compare it to many things. I mean, okay, if you look at, for example, Spain and Portugal, you'd think they're the same. And in fact, Portugal was even part of Spain once, but they are still very proud, and they have a central place in Lisbon where they celebrate their liberation from Spain, the Restauradores, Praça de Restauradores. So that's one thing, no? I mean, it's not necessarily, brothers are not necessarily on good terms always. And sometimes they can separate and form different countries. Well, they were allies. It's true, because this is something President Zelensky recently said in a very important speech. He said 8 million Ukrainians died defending the Soviet Union against Nazi Germany, which is true. And it's also true that Ukraine became an independent member of the UN because the Soviet Union wanted it. Ukraine and Belarus became founding members of the United Nations, parang sovereign states na rin, because the Soviet Union wanted to give them credit for that achievement. That's why it was so easy for them to be recognized immediately as sovereign states. Soviet Union broke down. Of course, we could go back to very long history. The history of the Ukraine is extremely long. I mean, okay, the first Kievan Rus, the first Russian kingdom was in Kiev, actually.
Right.
But the roots at that time were not yet really Russian. They were Scandinavians who had basically wandered south. And then if you go through the whole history of Ukraine, Ukraine actually means borderlands, according to one interpretation. So pinagdaanan ng palagi Old Slavic.
Slavic.
Yep.
And borderlands, have
everything, because they're basically in the center. If you look at Eurasia, steppes yan, ano? Eurasia have a lot of flatlands, katagan, steppes na pinagdaanan lahat yan ng mga nakabayo, horseback people. And so among these horseback peoples, you have the Mongols, you have the different Turkish people, and of course the Ukrainians themselves are proud of their Cossack heritage. The Cossacks, the horseback warriors, you know. but that was already when they were closer to Russia. And then, of course, you'll have the Greek influence at the Black Sea shore. Greeks already were there 3,000 years ago or so. You have Genoese who are at the Black Sea. You have Polish influences to the west. Austria conquered a part of western Ukraine. And then you had a lot of different tribes. Basta talagang pinagdaanan yan eh.
Oh, so parang melting pot rin siya, no?
Like, yeah, melting pot and buffer state.
Okay, interesting. Nice.
Basically, it grew out of a lot of conflicts. So basically, at some point, one part of Ukraine, or what is now Ukraine, was part of Poland, Lithuania, because that used to be an empire in the Middle Ages. And Crimea was a Khanate under Mongolians. So ganyan ka diverse yung kanilang history. So really, they really formed in a very complex way.
And I watched somewhere na parang they actually haven't really been independent for a long time.
Yeah, that's true.
Is that right? It's like they're currently, I don't know, in the process of determining like who they are, what is their like what does it mean to be Ukraine, no?
This is what Kissinger also wrote in a recent article just a day ago or so. They also have, basically you have huge differences between the Western Ukraine, which is Catholic, which is strongly influenced by Poland, and where they speak more Ukrainian, the real Ukrainian language, which is, some say, closer to Polish than to Russian. And then you have the parts of Ukraine where they consider themselves Ukrainians, but they speak Russian. And then you have the Donetsk,
which is the closer to Russia, right?
Donetsk and Luhan. You still hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Tito Brett, I'm not sure.
The east, Donetsk, Luhan, and Crimea, which are basically, in quotation marks, real Russian places. Partly because of settlement, because Donetsk and Luhan were settled during, this is what I heard at least, that Donetsk and Luhan were settled in the time of Stalin during industrialization. Maraming pabrika doon. So these are people who were settled from elsewhere. So that would be comparable to, land of promise Mindanao sa Pilipinas, no? Mainit din na, I mean, there's
correct.
also...
Actually, I was thinking of the the similarities between the two. But so in Ukraine, there are also factions, right? There are people that speak Ukraine, there are people that speak Russian, there are people that speak Ukraine and are clearly in their minds Ukrainian. There are people that speak Russian but also consider themselves Ukrainian. And there are also the people that want to be again part of Russia. Right? So
definitely.
Parang it's complex. But then, like, from what I saw also in some videos, their current president, who won, like, by a landslide, 70+%, is clearly does not want to be annexed by Russia, right?
No, that's true. There's a lot of different aspects there, Kasi, first of all...
Ubo ako para tingnan niyo kung narinig.
Hala, Tito Brett, we can hear you.
I'm here. Kiev, when I was there, I mean, it's a long time ago, no? It has an atmosphere more like, it has an atmosphere more similar to, let's say, Hungary than to actually Petersburg in Russia. It's more European, somehow it's also basically a warmer place in terms of climate. And so basically they have also this tendency to this, and also I think that's the feeling ever since the Soviet Union broke down, that they want to be part of Western Europe. There is also that feeling in Petersburg, because Petersburg was, of course, founded by Tsar Peter, who wanted to westernize Russia. But I think Russia has a different issue, no? It's like Spain had after 1898. Spain was in a national depression after 1898 because they lost the rest of their empire.
Right.
So, masakit. Kung pwede lang nilang gawin na ibalik ang Pilipinas sa kanila, except they didn't have the power, they would have done it. No?
Right. And also for the seat of power, like that helps, diba? Parang build the image of like a strong nation.
Yes. Well, that's why in the end Spain became dictatorship under Franco, because instead of attacking others, they started a civil war and everything because they had nowhere else to go. They were too weak to reconquer anything from their old empire. Pero in this case, it's different. Russia is still strong enough to do so, and there was a lot of after Russia was a lot of Russians. I mean, especially in some I talked to in Petersburg, end of the 90s, were basically, there was at that time a cigarette brand which had Malaya Rosia, Great Russia. I think that's what I remember. Great Russia, as mabahong sigarilyo yun, grabe. Pero anyway, it had Great Russia as its
product, no? Like it's like they want to bring it back to its superpower state.
Yeah, and it was not the name of the brand, but that was the
slogan. Yeah, parang ganon.
Yun ang yosi ng mga nasa kalye. Kalye.
So alam na natin kung ano yung gusto nila.
Oh, gusto nila. So I mean, Putin was not yet voted then, 1999, but he was already the mayor of Petersburg. And basically, he fulfilled that need. Kumbaga sa parang sinabi ni McCoy noong 1965, this nation can be great again. No?
Okay, so I'm seeing, in Ukraine, parang the recent elections, they voted a president that wants to be part of NATO, democratic, part of Europe.
Yes.
As a whole. And then we have Russia, who put in power a man that is the opposite, right? That wants to make Russia great again, and I guess part of that is attacking Ukraine.
Ilang ang tanong ko, sir, by occupying a land, are there madami bang natural resources in what you call this Ukraine that it would really benefit Russia?
Oh yes, Ukraine is a huge country. I don't remember if it's the fourth largest or one. It's basically one of the largest in Europe. It has enormous reserves of uranium, steel. That's what I remember. It has agriculturally, it was always the breadbasket of Russia because it's warmer. Its fields it has black soil, meaning that it has very fertile soil. Yeah, even to the extent that the national poet of Russia, Pushkin, wrote a poem about that, about the fields of Ukraine. So basically, it has a lot of resources. And another thing is considering yung geography ng Europe, between the NATO and the old Soviet Union, there are the Carpathians, which go from Poland to Romania. Bundok. Pero ang takot kasi ng mga Russian, once na meron kang foothold sa Ukraine, flat lahat yan. Dire-diretso na ang tangke mo hanggang Moscow. Yan ang
yeah, I remember that.
Yeah.
Because I think that's the same path na ginamit ni Napoleon at ng mga Germans in their previous wars. Am I right?
Well, there's actually another path going by the north. I don't actually know that, but I remember that there's also a path in the north kasi yung northern Eurasian plain goes all the way to the north of Germany where it's also flat, So you have the north of Poland, you have the Baltic states, you have the Baltic states, and this is also flat. That's why also the NATO has placed a lot of troops in Estonia, Lithuania, Latvia, as well as Poland. Because on the other side, mutual fear yan eh. What can happen is anytime it could also happen that Russian tanks come and cross the NATO border. So that's where they are guarding the NATO border as well. So if one looks at it from an analytical point of view, two sides are basically nagsisindakan yan. It's a game of chicken that has been going on for a while.
Okay, so I'm seeing there are a lot of reasons that I'm seeing for Russia taking over or intending to take over Spain, which is one, their image, right? And Putin's image. Two, economic, because there's a lot to gain in terms of natural resources. And three, parang military advantage, no? Which is scary. It's wait a minute. it's becoming like Russia versus Europe, or making sure na if there is such a conflict, they have a foothold on like the correct territory.
Yeah, in follow-up sa question ni Janine, sir, will this spiral into a bigger conflict, or it will just be isolated in Ukraine?
We can never tell kasi, these things are never predictable once nangyari yan, ano? It's like this great theoretician of war, Clausewitz, the German war theoretician, said, once the first shot is fired, all plans become useless.
Yeah, you never know.
Walang plano. And then really half of what happens is luck, and half of what happens is
I have another question. Sorry, because parang I see it everywhere, and it's like they're saying Russia doesn't want any Soviet state to be part of NATO. Things like what, why? Like, what's so important na, or why is it such an issue for them?
There's an old what do you call that, saying by the American strategic analyst George Kennan. I think he was the one who said it, because America has a few very good strategic analysts, yung mga nasa Pentagon and Washington, elsewhere. Russia is surrounded either by vassals or by enemies. And one reason why their statecraft is like that is because they were always overrun by they have no mountains to protect them. They're on the steppe. They're on the Eurasian plain. They were colonized by the Mongols by the long time. And then also the Germans, the Teutonic Knights came in the Middle Ages. So Alexander Nevsky, who defeated the Teutonic Knights in the Baltic, the Baltic, is still an important national hero for the old nationalist Russians. So basically, a lot of it is based on extreme carefulness. Of course, also, let's see, they were also invaded 2 times by Napoleon and then by Hitler, and then they used their defense of winter. They pulled back with a lot of damage to themselves.
Okay, sir. Ang tanong ko dito is, what's a good compromise to to stop the escalation? How could we stop the escalation of this conflict to a bigger war?
That's very hard. I don't know if it's already too late, because or at least it may have to go something. This reminds me kasi of the escalation in the 1990s in the Balkans, in ex-Yugoslavia. It happened. I mean, I was already here in Germany, and when Slovenia decided to leave Yugoslavia, and then it went between Croatia and Yugoslavia still, hindi pa Serbia noon. And then Bosnia, Sarajevo, all of that, and then at the very end, Kosovo, and at the end, Kosovo and the NATO coming in, NATO coming in and bombing Belgrade, and then taking over Kosovo with zones of occupation. So you never really know the end of it. That's the problem, and this is a lot bigger.
But will sanctions work? The economic sanctions that are being given out by the Western nations, will they work?
That's a good question, because there are dependencies on 2 sides. Russian resources are huge. Russia is basically half the continent. Together with China, definitely, With Chinese, who are their allies. It might happen that the Russians will do more business with China, and then they'll just be working together more, That could happen. Na mas mapolarize pang mundo bagong war. And then we don't know. Everything is open from there.
Yeah.
And then de-escalation, I don't know if it's possible with Putin nowadays. Kasi napahiya na siya. Feeling, at least yung tingin ko, feeling niya na napahiya na siya. Kasi nga, ayaw mapahiya.
So dapat we should be moving for a dis-escalation. Kumbaga, let's have cooler heads.
Oh,
this
but
time.
then it depends on the leaders, right? And if they're saying, okay, what if the leader just isn't having it? As in, wala. Go lang ng go.
I don't know who can do it. Kasi the one who understands things the most, I think, is still Kissinger. Kasi si Kissinger, taga yan eh. Kissinger is actually from Nuremberg originally. Si Henry Kissinger. Tapos he went to the US, no, because of World War II. Jewish origin kasi siya, no. He couldn't stay here, but basically he has knowledge of both the American and the European and the Russian mentality, which are different. So ang sabi niya is that both the American, the ones in America, the ones in charge in America, as well as Putin, don't understand the mentality of the other side. So paano ano yun? Ang hirap niyan. There has to be some kind of go-between who is able to negotiate that very well. And you know, talents like Kissinger was in the 1970s are very rare.
May sinasabi
So we
si
need to have a
Mox, Tito
go-between.
Brett. Kilala mo ba si Mox? Sinasabi niya, he doesn't think there will be any compromise. Ayan. Hala.
Oo nga
No,
pala. Let me remind the viewers natin na if they want to post some questions right now, they are feel free to post your questions sa Facebook. Okay? Habang nandito yung guest natin, si Mr. Salazar.
Tama yung tanong, tama yung ano. I mean, what he's saying actually is, ako, dalawa lang ang nakikita kong possibility dyan eh. There will either be a compromise or one side will win. That's why I mentioned the example of Yugoslavia, and in the end, America went in, bombed Belgrade, which was terrible for the Serbs, because I knew also people from both sides, you know. In that, I know people from Serbia, I know people from Croatia, and I have the story there, you know. I've heard different views of the story. This is one thing about being European, is that you know many different perspectives.
Right.
Anyway, I think it's either there's going to be a compromise or one side is going to be basically defined as the winner or the loser. Basically, one side will either one side will have to give up at one point. And I don't think the West is going to do that. I don't think Putin will either. But at the same time, nobody wants a nuclear escalation. So, ayun. There's so many things in the cards, you know. We also don't know how much China will support Putin.
Yun. Okay, I don't think we have much time. Maybe we have like 3 minutes left. So, may last question ka ba, Tito Brett? Or ako na? Kasi yung question ko medyo, I mean, baka engengs. But I'll ask it anyway.
Okay, ito may question kasi. Go. Why does Russia want to occupy Ukraine? What does President Putin gain?
Well, face and basically pride, I think. It's a lot to do also with this image, no, of being a strong man at home and abroad. And basically, I mean, there has been a lot of the things that have been done as a challenge. And let's also consider that Putin is soon going to be 70. I have personal feeling ko lang ito. No? He probably want to finish something as long as he's still in power, as long as he's still alive.
Right. Even if he has legacy in mind na, no?
Even if it's dangerous, even if it's a gamble. It's not typical for Putin calculating siya usually. But this time, sumusubok talaga siya.
Mayroon pa question, may follow-up question pa.
Go.
What is stopping NATO to accept Ukraine as a NATO organization, as a NATO country?
Well, they didn't accept them. Actually, the story of Putin na ang NATO palapit sa Russia is not fully true, because they wanted NATO was very reluctant to accept the Eastern European countries. Kaya lang they wanted to be under the protection of America and the West. And of course, they wanted to be EU because they also saw the promise of, Western affluence, lifestyle, everything, no? And Ukraine, well, Putin gave some warnings, like for Georgia, no? In attacking on Georgia, because Georgia also wanted to join. So there's also this fear. There has been this, NATO has been trying also not, in spite of what Putin is saying, they've been trying not to anger him. Because these are the borders that actually done is the former Soviet Union. Baltic states, ibang usapan yan. Pero,
okay. Janine, I think baka mag-spill over tayo, no? Maganda ang kwentuhan.
Maganda ang kwentuhan. But
actually, we also have another interview. Kumbaga, let's not end the conversation with Mr. Salazar. Ipasok natin muna yung interview natin with one person that knows about what are the humanitarian efforts that are being done now in Ukraine. Now, to our viewers, kung meron pang mga questions, please let them post them in Facebook so that we can try to ask them to Mr. Salazar, because siguro nandito pa rin si Mr. Salazar for a while.
Yes, but I'm just to be sure, I want to ask like a last question for Mr. Salazar, no? Just in case, like, kasi live tayo, hindi natin alam kung may time pa siya or hindi. But with all of this, what is your hope? Like, I don't want to, kasi parang ngayon ang dami ko ng ideas na, oh my gosh, like apocalyptic, alam mo yun, imagination. But what is the hope conclusion of it all?
My personal hope is actually that civil society in Russia, which has been growing, no? Yung democratic society in Russia wins against Putin. Because if the will of the Russian people is not, and there are signs that it's the will of the Russian people, many Russian people, not to kill their brothers. Right. So this could be actually, it could be a bit like a Vietnam War situation for America, on that people internally will start thinking this is not okay.
That's beautiful. Like in
that's
the end,
beautiful.
It is. It's like in the end, it's in the power of the people, diba? And we just celebrated People Power anniversary. So
nga, no?
I'm feeling it. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much, Mr. Salazar.
We learned so much, and maybe later or another day we can continue the conversation, because there's like a lot that we can talk about when it comes to this issue. But thank you for sharing with us your expertise, your expertise on the matter. We really appreciate it.
Okay. So we go to the second portion of our show, where we interviewed this morning humanitarian worker discussing the relief efforts na what is happening in Ukraine. Now, before we proceed, let me apologize for the technical difficulties that we are having, because this is a live. This is the first time na magla-live
Our first
kami,
live.
Janine.
Correct.
And then syempre, hindi pa namin na-export tong paggamit ng modern technology. Okay, tandaan nyo, tito na ako, hindi ko alam to. Ang naabutan ko ng panahon ko is yung if you want to use the internet, you have to call the internet service provider, and then the internet will gaganon. So, okay, if you have any questions, please post sa Facebook, and then we'll have the interview now.
Yeah, so ipi-play na ba, or pwede pa ako mag-reflect, or mag-reflect ba ako after, Tito Brett?
Then okay na.
Okay. Ang ganda nito, guys. Muntik na akong maiyak in the end of it. So I hope you guys enjoy it too.